Through this apparatus, arranged like a puppet theater and including a plate glass, nonverbal communications among children from 15 to 36 months were systematically analyzed. Apertures permit observation and filming of interpersonal behavior at different moments of the day. The shots were made without the addition of artificial light in order to avoid a possible source of distraction. In November 1970, the first weeks of observation and films made it possible to distinguish more precisely some of the children. This is Frank, Dominique on the left, Pascal on the right, Emmanuel, Jean-Charles below left, and Christophe below right. Three of these children often find themselves together. Pascal in the foreground, Dominique, who is playing with a box, and Frank pushing a car. Frank and Dominique are characterized throughout by frequent and varied appeasing behavior. On the other hand, Pascal's appeasing acts are fewer. It is to Frank, the most appeasing child, that Dominique offers his box, and not to Pascal, who takes it by force. To this taking by force, Dominique protests only feebly. In revenge, Pascal responds aggressively. A group forms around Frank, the most appeasing child, here in the background. On the left, here is Frank again, who leads the group. He's the leader. Frank is attractive to all the children, including the dominated ones, like Christophe on the left. Christophe always keeps a certain distance between himself and the dominant ones like Frank, as is the case here, in spite of their overtures to him. 2 months later, in January 1971, here is Frank again, who as usual has taken precedence by holding onto the central leg of a three-legged table which has been turned upside down on another. On the right, Dominique and Emmanuel, his immediate subordinates, and behind, Christophe, who never participates in the competition for the table legs. On the left, Emmanuel comes to take possession of a vacant table leg. He has removed a bolt from the table, which Frank wants, but he doesn't give it to him. The children offer, in fact, less and less often to Frank, who, following his mother's temporary absence, has become less and less appeasing and more aggressive. 2 minutes later, while Frank returns, Emmanuel holds the central leg of the table. Emmanuel defends his position by threatening with his left hand. Then, while Frank approaches, Emmanuel shakes the leg of the table, a behavior similar to chimpanzees' threats. While Frank replaces the bolt, Christophe in the foreground is always apart from the others. Having done with the bolt, Frank quickly takes over the highly coveted central leg. Emmanuel finds himself ousted to the right leg. Pascal, another of Frank's subordinates, comes to hold the left leg. In the background, Christophe, who has come nearer to Frank, never participates in the competition. 2 weeks later, Frank, his chair slightly withdrawn, is more and more often isolated since his aggressive behavior has taken precedence over his appeasing. Behind, facing us, a bigger child than the others. It is Jean-Charles, who is dominated and often isolated. He speaks well, but his underdeveloped gestures prevent him from being integrated into the others' activities. As the meal ends, Frank hops. On the left, Emmanuel immediately imitates him. As a result of this simple imitation, communication is again established between Emmanuel and Frank. Striking the table, Frank is imitated by Emmanuel, then by Dominique and another child on the right. Frank has provisionally got back his ability to lead. A week later, Frank on the left is still as isolated, while Emmanuel and Dominique remain very close. The postures and gestures of these two children finally become identical. When two children become very close, they have in fact a tendency to imitate each other and thus to develop similar gestural repertories. Emmanuel, by his imitations and appeasing body postures, tries to bring Frank out of his isolation. A nonverbal communication is thus established, and it lasts 3 to 4 minutes between these two children. This type of communication permits establishment and reinforcement of bonds between children of 2 to 3 years. Frank responds to Emmanuel's overtures with an offering. Left in the background by Emmanuel for 5 to 6 minutes, Dominique appeals to him with a typical appeasement. He rests his head on Emmanuel's shoulder. It is through such nonverbal communications that bonds are reinforced between young children. At the beginning of March 1971, we can recapitulate the dominance relations among the young children as follows. Frank dominates Dominique, Emmanuel, and Pascal, who themselves dominate Jean-Charles and Christophe. In March 1971, Frank and Pascal have gone. We continue to follow Dominique, Emmanuel, Jean-Charles, and Christophe. Dominique has precedence by holding onto the central leg of the inverted table. He's very appeasing. Here he smiles and feigns an offering. Ten seconds later, Emmanuel, another dominant one, comes to hold one of the two other legs on the left. Dominic, the most dominant, temporarily leaves the central leg, but rapidly returns to take this coveted place. "12 minutes after the departure of the dominant ones, Christophe arrives in the background and pushes down one of the smaller children. It is only now that he is able to hold on to a table leg. 2 weeks later, Emmanuel, Bruno, and another child communicate frequently, while Dominique on the right is more and more often isolated. He follows the same pattern as Frank. The frequency of his appeasing acts diminishes as the frequency of his aggressive acts increases. These modifications coincide with upsetting events in Dominique's family. On a nearby table, beside another dominant child who wipes the table in front of them, we see again two of the dominated children, Jean-Charles, who wipes only in front of himself, and Christophe, who doesn't wipe at all. Christophe in the background is more and more alone. On the other hand, Jean-Charles on the right foreground is more and more often accepted by the dominant ones, here by Dominique. Christophe on the left skirts the group which now includes Jean-Charles. He is still not integrated. April 1971. Let us recapitulate the relations of dominance among the following young children. Dominique dominates Emmanuel. He also dominates Jean-Charles, who also is dominated by Emmanuel. Christophe is clearly dominated by Dominique and Emmanuel. May 1971, after Dominique and Emmanuel have gone, Jean-Charles is again on the right, now very appeasing and using gestures. He consoles the nearby child who has just been slapped. At the aggressor's blow, he responds with a very ritualized threat. Very appeasing, Jean-Charles continues to console the nearby child. Then he seeks out and soothes another child. As his ability to gesture develops, Jean-Charles becomes dominant. He now wipes in front of the others. How has Christophe developed during this time? He puts a napkin in his mouth and tries to start a game. The other children ignore him. His power to attract and to lead is weak. Christophe's behavior often includes postures and gestures of fear. He must submit most often to aggression from the others, even from the smaller ones, as is the case here. He rarely emerges as the victor from such competitions and remains dominated. Gathered in flasks at regular intervals throughout the day, the children's urine has been submitted to biochemical analyses. We've measured, among other things, the 17-hydroxycorticosteroids, or 17-OHs, which are derived from adrenal hormones and which are sometimes called the stress hormones. Here, over 4 days, are the daily curves of these hormones for Jean-Charles, the appeasing and dominant child, and Christophe, the fearful and dominated one. On ordinate, here's the rate of 17 OHs per 100 cubic centimeters of urine, and on abscissa, the hours of the day. The rate of 17 OHs at the moment of daily peak, most often towards 11 o'clock, is always much higher in Christophe's curves than in Jean-Charles. Thus, there appears to be a close correspondence between the behavioral profile of the child and his adrenal physiology. In the month of October 1971, after the departure of Jean-Charles and Christophe, Alain wipes the table in front of the others and so seems to be dominant. When he wants something, Alain is very aggressive. When one table is turned over on another, Alain takes priority by holding the central leg. The other children keep out of the way. Alain, standing, defends his privileged position on the overturned table by frequent aggression. He slaps. He pretends to bite. Strikes again. Or pretends to bite again. During this time, a small group of children forms with, in particular, Olivier, the second child departing from the right. The others turn towards Olivier. On the right, Olivier's appeasing acts are spontaneous, frequent, and varied. Here's another example. Olivier, kneeling down, comes spontaneously to console a little girl. When he raises the mattress, he's immediately rejoined and imitated by two children. He has great ability to attract and lead. In another situation, he puts a box on his head. He is at once followed and imitated by two other children. Olivier is unquestionably a leader, but is he dominant? When a table is reversed upon another, at the two legs on the right, Alain is in the background and Olivier in the foreground. Alain defends his place with blows. Olivier is very calm. Alain, who is very unstable, has left his place. Olivier defends the access to the vacant leg with very ritualized threats, not by aggression. Then he even allows another child to grasp the leg. Olivier, the appeaser and leader, occupies the reversed table for the longest time. Here are over 3 days the daily 17-OH curves of Alain, the aggressive dominator, and of Olivier, the appeasing leader. Olivier's curves are regular from one day to the next with a peak at 11 o'clock. Alain's are fluctuating. Incidentally, the rate of 17-OHs at the peak moment is always lower in Olivier's curves. In the month of October 1972, Olivier and Alain have gone. Among the children who most often occupy the reversed table are Philippe, left, and Laurent, right. Laurent, the most dominant, comes to give Philippe very subdued blows, which express more of a threat than actual aggression. Laurent, facing us, is a very expressive child. He expresses threats much more often than aggression, which for him is infrequent and not backed up. There he goes to give a very subdued slap on the arm to another child who is coming to occupy the table. On the other hand, Philippe, who wants another's ball, takes it by force, striking the other's face. Then he throws the ball on Laurent, who replies by slapping Philippe's hand very softly. Let us follow these two children. Laurent is appeasing and attractive. Seated on a table, he captures the attention of 2, 3, and then 4 children. We find Laurent again seated on the table. A tiny tot in white overalls comes spontaneously to offer him a piece of paper. Laurent, on the left, uses frequent and varied appeasing behavior. Here's an example. Laurent has all the characteristics of the leaders of the past years. On the other hand, already at the age of 20 months, Philippe, on the left, displays frequent spontaneous acts of aggression. Here is Philippe again, at 30 months, kneeling on a table on the left. He strikes the nearby child. Then he disturbs the activities of the other children by sweeping away the building pieces which were on the table. One of the children coming to protest sets off Philippe's aggressive reaction. Here are, over 4 days, the daily 17 OH curves for Philippe, the aggressive dominator, and for Laurent, the leader. Laurent's curves are regular from one day to the next. Philippe's are fluctuating. The rate of 17 OHs at the peak moment is always lower in Laurent's curves. Thus, the same correspondence between behavior and adrenal physiology have been found as in the preceding years. That has been confirmed for other children.